My 5 big takeaways from yesterday in the NFL, and I could have easily done 50, to be completely honest with you. But as we continue here, I will run through some more stuff. But let's start with the 5 big things.
Number 5.
I cannot believe they allowed Matt Nagy to fly back to Chicago with his team. If I were the ownership of the Chicago Bears, I genuinely would have been standing on the tarmac and said, let me just check your IDs, please. You go on. What, are you the head coach here and the offensive genius? The Bears had 1 net passing yard, which is to say they gained 68 yards on their passes and lost 67 yards on sacks. Through 3 games, they're averaging 3.3 yards per offensive play, which is the lowest by any team in the last 15 years. Matt Nagy, the offensive guru, who was brought there to be the quarterback whisperer and be the genius, who is going to first mentor the number 2 overall pick in Mitchell Trubisky, and now the guy the franchise traded up for in Justin Fields, is overseeing the worst offense in the NFL in the last 15 years. It's a disgrace. The game plan they put together, you heard me talking about it all last week. I almost felt bad saying it. So I kept saying, well, I want to see them put together an offensive game plan that works for the player and not for Andy Dalton. They ran Andy Dalton's offense yesterday and just plugged Justin Fields into it. That is a disgrace. It is the opposite of his job. And it's not like Justin Fields is not the backup. He's the future. He dropped him back 30 times yesterday. They used pre-snap motion 4 times. They used max protection twice. They had 2 designed rollouts and 2 designed quarterback runs in a game that his defense was fighting their behinds off to keep them in. That was a disgrace. I honestly cannot believe they allowed him on the plane yesterday.
Number 4.
Justin Herbert is every bit as good as Patrick Mahomes. That's just the truth. Patrick Mahomes is an unbelievable quarterback. He's as good as anybody ever seen. He's not better than Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert in his second year is ridiculous. Now, the Chargers almost managed themselves into a game they had no business losing yesterday. And the guys told me on Get Up this morning, when they throw that touchdown pass at the end, if you saw the end of the game, you know what I'm talking about. If you didn't, it's very hard for me to explain in great detail. But they were in a position, they were inside the 10-yard line. All they need to do was kneel on it, let the clock run down to 3 seconds, and kick a chippy, an old extra point, and they win the game. Instead, they throw a touchdown pass in the corner of the end zone and give Patrick Mahomes time to come down and beat them. Oh, by the way, they then miss the extra point, not from the 4-yard line, but from where it's kicked now. And they left themselves vulnerable. A touchdown would have actually beaten them at the end. Let's put that aside for the moment. Justin Herbert is a stud, super stud. He's unreal. In Patrick Mahomes' 57 starts, including the playoffs, there have been 5 games where the opposing quarterback had more passing yards, more yards per attempt, and a higher completion percentage in that game, which is to say 5 times that he was indisputably outplayed. Justin Herbert has 2 of those. And he has now started, I believe I'm right, he has now started 16 games in his NFL career. Is that right? Or yesterday would be his 17th.
He has started 18 NFL games.
It's week 3. It's week 3. 18 games. He has started 18 games. Justin Herbert is a stud. And that matchup between Herbert and Mahomes twice a year over the next 15 years is a fantasy. It's like the greatest thing you could ever possibly imagine. Sign me up for as much of that as I can possibly get.
Number 3.
I cannot believe how badly the Lions got screwed. This is not about Justin Turner making that kick. You know, Hembo does an unbelievable job. He's always putting stats in here for me. Justin Tucker is now 16 for 16 in his NFL career on field goals in the final minute of regulation. Good for him. I never thought I'd hear myself say this. But a 66-yard, so the longest field goal in NFL history that stoinked in off the crossbar to win a game that you otherwise would lose on the final play of regulation is not the story here. It's not. The Lions getting absolutely ripped off by Lamar Jackson and the Ravens offense not being called for a delay of game on the previous play is inexcusable. We all know that when that clock hits 0, there's usually you give them just a beat. You give the offense a beat before you throw the flag. They got to 2 Mississippi. Remember you growing up and playing football? 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi. They got to 2 Mississippi. How on earth was that not called? And at the risk of stating the obvious, that would have turned a 66-yard field goal try into a 71-yard field goal, which, A, they wouldn't have tried in the first place. They would have thrown an alley-oop. Not an alley-oop, a Hail Mary, excuse me. And B, if they did try it, as we saw, it wouldn't have made it. Because this one made it by an inch. Veritably made it by an inch. That ball, if that ball is 6 inches shorter, it's going to stoink back onto the field of play. It is the most amazing finish maybe ever. But how do the Lions always get screwed like this? I mean, of all the teams for this to happen to, I genuinely feel sorry for them and their fans. They almost came all the way back to beat San Francisco week 1. They played Green Bay pretty tough on the road in a tough game on Monday night. And now this? They won the game yesterday. They won it. So that's the hot take here. It's not about Justin Tucker. My apologies to Justin Tucker, who I love, who's maybe the clutchest kicker ever, and who, oh, by the way, sings opera in his spare time. But the Lions just got ripped off. Greeny with the Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. Straight Talk Wireless, no contract, no compromise. These are my hot takes.
Number 2.
Watching the Steelers yesterday felt like watching the end of something. There was something about seeing them being manhandled at home by the Cincinnati Bengals that felt like you were seeing the end of something. Ben Roethlisberger threw 13 passes behind the line of scrimmage yesterday. One of them came on a 4th and 10 with 3 minutes to go, down 14. They had no chance against the Cincinnati Bengals. Not against Cleveland, not against Baltimore, not against Kansas City, not against Tampa, against Cincinnati, who is supposed to be the doormat. Well, they're doormats no more. Joe Burrow is a freaking stud. Jamar Chase all of a sudden can catch, and he shows you why he's the 5th pick in the draft. But this is about the Steelers, who have been a model of consistency and excellence forever and will remain that. But it's over for Ben. Sorry to say it. I hate to see it go. I always feel sad when these great players come to the end of their careers. But that's just the reality. And they're not doing anything of consequence this year. Yeah, the defense is going to get a lot better. They played without T.J. Watt yesterday. He's the most important player on that, actually the most important player on that whole team. But I don't think they win that game with him yesterday anyway. Their offense got manhandled. And there are much better defenses in the sport than Cincinnati's. So I'll say it again. I know it's only the beginning of the season, but the hot take is watching the Steelers yesterday felt like watching the end of something.
Number 1.
The Jets have regressed. From week 1 to week 3, they've gotten way worse. And all any of us who are their fans, the few and the proud of us, because there were so few of us, that this game didn't even get a ripple. What the Jets are doing to Zach Wilson isn't even getting a ripple nationally. And the reason for that is because they're so irrelevant that people just don't care outside of those of us who live and die with this stuff. But all you cared about going into the season was just let it start getting better. Like, let me see why we drafted Zach Wilson. Let me see why everyone's so excited about him. Let me see the enthusiasm and excitement of a young coaching staff. You watch Detroit? You watch that team fight like hell for their coach? Do the Jets look like they're fighting like hell? Why did they get on the plane? Why did they fly to Denver yesterday? Why did they bother? They could still be out there right now and they wouldn't have scored. The Jets are the only team in the NFL that has yet to play with a lead at any point, and there's no obvious reason to think they're going to have one. None. The Jets are worse than they were last year, much worse. And they've given absolutely no chance to the rookie quarterback. I didn't think you could do anything worse to a person than they did to Sam Darnold. This is worse. They gave him a head coach who's never been a head coach, an offensive coordinator who's never been an offensive coordinator, and no backup. No backup quarterback of anybody who's ever played a game in their life. They're giving him no chance. They are sabotaging Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson should be begging them to let him get out of there. What they're doing to him is a disgrace. And I'm not going to keep talking about it. You know why? Because I have an obligation to talk about things and teams that matter. People that seem to be trying. Thank you for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.